Okay. We're live. I'm in. I hacked my way into being live. Excellent connection. You love to see it. Allergies. Bless me. It's not an imperative, it's a... what do you call it? That one in French that you can never quite master because you just don't use it. But anyway, hello. The burning. It's time for the burning. Burning time. What are you doing? Burn. Okay, well I spelled it with a Y. Hey! Hi Jesse, thank you. Hi Josh. Okay, I might, oh, cool. John's getting vaxxed. Nice. Sweet. As many exclamation marks as I like. Heaps. Okay, so I got D&D at 6. So we're going to read till then, and then I'm going to switch modes and become Sam Valentine, Halfling Detective. A Columbo-style, little bumbler. I love it. It's the best character I've ever made up, I think. Thank you. Yes, they burned, yeah, that is the recap, basically. Okay, Matthew Good, the brother of Benjamin Good, the magistrate, he, he solicited a bribe. Oh, it says no data. Am I still going? Am I still on? I think I'm still going. It's fine. It's probably good. How did I get these amazing face-framing curls? A razor comb. I've discovered them. I'm wrecking my hair with them, and I'm never looking back. But yeah, no, sorry. Okay, Benjamin Fear trumped up charges against Martha and Susanna Good. You still see me? Yes. His brother Matthew Fear went to their father, William Good, and said, give me a bribe of £80 and a brass warming pan, and I'll set them free. And William Good was like, yeah, absolutely, man, yeah, go for it. And then, like a total idiot, he went out to watch the burning, thinking it would be the releasing. It wasn't, it was the burning. Both of the Fear brothers had escaped the village and taken all of their shit, like all of the villagers' shit. So these people were just like, well, there's not much to do anyway, I guess we're going to burn these witches. And then William goes home. He doesn't have baby George with him. Remember baby George? He exists. He doesn't have baby George with him. He goes home and he goes into a secret room full of devil worship and evil magic, and he's like, they weren't witches, but I am. And then everybody in chat asked the question that I never asked when I was a kid reading this book, which is, why didn't he use these powers before now? Or at any rate, before his wife and daughter burned to death? A lot of questions. So, the story picks up again for part 2, 18 years later, not 3. Benjamin and Matthew Fear are once again successful farmers. Matthew's wife Constance has given him a daughter, Mary. And one person in each video is going to have a stupid voice, at least one. Benjamin's son, Edward, is a grown man. He never married Anne Ward, but he has married Rebecca, a woman from a nearby village. They have a son named Ezra. And we pick up Western Pennsylvania Frontier, 1710. Chapter 12. That's 5 minutes of fucking around. That's enough, right? Hang on, I gotta pour a glass of fizzy. I say glass, but I mean a plastic cup. Interesting note, in America, you guys have lots of names for fizzy drink. You call it soda or pop or just Coke, no matter what it is. We call it fizzy, but I have heard younger people say soda. We never said that when I was young. Oh my god. That was such a long time ago. Yeah, so fizzy. Chapter 12. Soda pop. My soda is too cold, it hurt my teeth. We got The Simpsons. We weren't, you know. Hi Phil, how's it going? Western Pennsylvania Frontier, 1710. Sometimes I think this family is cursed, Benjamin Fear muttered, pulling his chair closer to the long dining table. At the end of the last chapter we saw William Good actively cursing their family, so this is like really clever. You are starting to sound like a crotchety old man, father, Edward said, laughing. Ha 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 ha! I am a crotchety old man, Benjamin declared with pride. How can you say we... Oh, sorry, this is Matthew talking. How can you say we are cursed? Benjamin's brother Matthew demanded, sniffing the aroma of roast chicken as he entered the room. Look how our farm has prospered, Benjamin. Look how our family has grown. Chicken wasn't commonly eaten until the 50s because we didn't have the resources until then to like farm them in a way that meant that people could eat the chicken. It was just kind of a waste of an egg machine. But we'll put that aside. It's just an interesting fact. I can see that you have certainly grown, Benjamin teased. Matthew had become quite stout. As he took his place at the table, everyone could see that his linen shirt was stretched tight around his bulging middle. Rude. Uncle Benjamin, are you teasing my father again? Mary Fear scolded. Matthew's daughter Mary set a serving platter of potatoes and string beans in front of Matthew. They burned at the end of the last video. Look at you. You look like Queen Anne herself, Benjamin roared at Mary. Mary blushed. I put my hair up, that is all. Mary was 17. She had long, copper-coloured hair, as did her mother, Constance Fear. She also had her mother's creamy, pale complexion and shy smile. She had her father Matthew's dark, penetrating eyes. Hey, what's up? We've picked up 18 years later. Benjamin and Matthew Fear are still farmers. Matthew has a daughter called Mary, who is 17, sorry. Edward's gotten married, and he has a baby son called Ezra, or a young son, I'm not sure. Why do you scold Mary, Constance, Matthew's wife, demanded of Benjamin, sweeping into the room, holding the platter of roast chicken in front of her long white apron. Mary worked all afternoon, peeling potatoes and snapping the beans for your dinner. I also picked the beans, Mary added grumpily. It's meant to be a Dracula, I don't know what it is. He was only teasing, Cousin Mary, Edward said. Weren't you, Father? Benjamin didn't reply. He had a faraway look clouding his dark eyes. He stared at the narrow window. Father? Edward repeated. Benjamin lowered his eyes to his son with a frown. Were you addressing me? He barked. Speak up! I am an old man, Edward. I cannot abide mutterers. Where is Rebecca? Matthew demanded, his eyes searching the long, narrow dining room. Rebecca, Edward's beautiful young wife, always seemed to be the last to the table. I believe she is tending Ezra, Edward told his uncle. Your son has been trouble since the day he was born, Benjamin grumbled. His booming voice had become raspy and harsh. Well, too bad, because I'm not doing that. Ezra is a difficult child, Edward admitted to his father, accepting the platter of chicken. Stop mentioning the chicken, it's all wrong. But I believe you go too far. I'm his grandfather. I can go as far as I please, Benjamin bellowed unpleasantly. If you don't like my remarks, Edward, go eat your dinner at your own house. He pointed out the window toward Edward's house across the pasture. Hush, hush, brother, Matthew instructed, raising a hand for peace. Let us enjoy our dinner without your usual sour complaints. Rebecca entered, pulling Ezra behind her. It was evident from Ezra's wet eyes that he'd been crying. Ezra was 6, but acted as if he were much younger. Rebecca, sighing wearily, lifted him into a chair and told him not to squirm. Rebecca had straight black hair pulled back from a high forehead, olive green eyes, and dramatic dark lips. She had been a high-spirited, giggly girl when she married Edward, but 6 years of mothering Ezra and helping... Ezra's such a piece of shit, they're just ramming it home. And helping out on the farm had brought lines to her forehead and a weariness to her voice. Will you eat some chicken now, Ezra? She asked. No, the boy shouted, crossing his arms defiantly in front of his chest. He has a strong will. He is a true fear, Benjamin growled approvingly. I am not, Ezra cried peevishly. I am Ezra, that is all. Everyone laughed. Rebecca dropped a chicken leg onto the boy's plate. Eat your dinner, she instructed softly. What a fine family we are, Matthew said happily, patting his large belly. Oh yeah, Matthew got fat. That's also a plot point, I guess. Look around this table, Benjamin. No fear, only Ezra. He's going to go by one name. Look around this table, Benjamin. Look at our children and grandchildren, and think of our prosperous farm and trading store. How can you say that this family is cursed? Benjamin chewed his food, presumably the chicken they won't shut up about, slowly before replying. Cursed, he muttered after swallowing. The new roof shingles. Edward finished putting them up just last week, and last night that thunderstorm washed away half of them. Is that not a curse? Edward chuckled. Only a few shingles were blown off, father, he said, reaching for his pewter water cup. Matthew, I like that. It's pretty funny. There will still be light after dinner. I will go up on the roof and examine it closely. I am certain it has been a minor repair. Cousin Edward, it will be too dark, Mary warned. Can it not wait until tomorrow? Mary and Edward were more like brother and sister than cousins. Mary was also close to Edward's wife, Rebecca. There were few young people in the village for Mary to befriend. She had only her family to turn to for companionship. Edward's bad at everything. There will be enough light to examine the shingles, Edward assured her, helping himself to more string beans. He smiled at Mary. Do not fret. Wipe your uncle's words from your mind. There is no curse on the Fear family. The only curse around here is my crotchety old father. The family's laughter at this feeble jest rose up from the long dining table. It floated out the window, out of the 2-story stone house to reach the ears of a white bearded man in ragged clothes, who was hidden behind the fat trunk of an old oak tree just beyond Mary's small flower garden. Bum, bum, bum. Careful to keep out of view, the man leaned toward the sound of the laughter, the sleeve of his worn coat pressed against the rough bark. His tired eyes explored the steep shingled roof of the sturdy farmhouse. Then he lowered his gaze to the window where the tangy aroma of roast chicken floated out. Tangy? Yeah, it's the dad. It's not really a spoiler to tell you that. The man's stomach growled. It had been a while since he had eaten. But he was too excited to think about food now. Too excited to think about his long journey, a journey of years. He could feel his heart pound beneath his thin shirt. His breath escaped in noisy wheezes. Such rapid breathing his sides began to ache. He gripped the tree trunk so tightly his hands hurt. "At last!" he whispered to the tree. "At last!" A whispered cry of joy, of triumph. The white-haired man was William Good. Yeah. For almost 20 years I have sought this moment, he thought, staring intently at the flickering light through the window, listening to the chime of voices inside. For 20 years I have searched the colonies for the fears, my enemies. At last I have found them. At last I can carry out my curse. At last I can avenge my wife and daughter. I have found the fears, and now they will suffer, as I have suffered. All of them, one by one. This is really kind of recapping the page that we just read, if we were reading this in a book. No, more like a sister than a cousin means less incest. Surely. Nah. Everything's possible. It's the internet. Oh, you mean that maybe her dad is actually Benjamin? That's between him and Constance. That's none of our business. He heard the clatter of dishes, the scrape of chairs. Then, to his surprise, the door opened and a young man came out of the house, followed by several others. With a gasp, William pulled his head back out of view and pressed himself even tighter against the tree's ragged bark. The sun was low behind the trees. The sky was a wash of pink and purple, quickly darkening. I'm reading too fast because I'm getting excited. I'm going to try and slow it down. From his hiding place, William Good squinted hard, struggling to recognize the faces of those he had hunted for so many years. He had somehow expected them to look the same. Now he stared in surprise to see the changed faces and bodies. Your changing body and you and William Good outside. Can that be Edward Fear? He asked himself, watching the young man prop a wooden ladder against the side of the house. Edward was but a boy when I last saw him. Now he has become a sturdy young man. And that white-haired man stooped over his walking stick. William squinted hard. Can that be Benjamin Fear? He's aged badly, William decided. Back in Wickham he was tall and broad-shouldered, a man as powerful as his booming voice. And now his shoulders are hunched, and he leans heavily on his stick with a trembling grip. All the better to help you topple into your grave, Benjamin Fear, William Good thought with a grim smile. Surely the walking stick would make it harder for him to tumble into his own grave. You know what, never mind. I still have my powers, William thought with satisfaction, and I plan to use them now. Okay, hey, Evelyn. Yeah, it's... No, Edward did not. They fled the village. He married a girl called Rebecca from another farm, another village. Benjamin has grown old. Matthew has grown fat, and he's about to be fat-shamed by William Good in the next paragraph, so, like, skip that if you don't like hearing that. And Matthew has a daughter called Mary, who is 17 with copper-coloured hair and creamy skin and a stupid voice. And William Good has finally found them. He's watching them from behind a tree. It's really creepy. Oh, and Edward has a son called Ezra now, who is a really difficult child. Summary complete. Oh yeah, he totally got old too. But he's being a bitch. Recognizing, here's where the fat shaming comes in. Recognizing Benjamin's brother Matthew, William nearly laughed out loud. Why, he has become as fat as one of his cows, William declared to himself. Look how he struts with his belly hanging out. You will strut to your grave, Matthew, William decided, feeling a wave of bitterness sweep over him. It will be a painful journey for you, Matthew. You will beg for death, but I will make your death agonizing and slow. For you are my betrayer. You are the one who robbed me of my money and my family. William couldn't have known the little boy, this is Ezra, who was scampering through the flower garden, unheedful of the blossoming flowers, nor did he recognize the copper-haired young woman who held the side of the ladder. What fine linen shirts the men all wear, thought William bitterly, and the girls' dresses of the most expensive fabric. The most expensive fabric. It's just peacock feathers, like, twined into a dress. What are the young people's names? Are they the children or the grandchildren of the Fear brothers? It doesn't matter, he thought, closing his eyes, a broad smile hidden behind his scraggly moustache and beard. It doesn't matter what your names are. You are Fears, and all fears shall start to suffer now. All. End of chapter 12. Chapter 13. The sun is nearly down, Mary told her cousin, gripping the sides of the ladder. There is enough light, Edward insisted. Move away, I'm only going up for a moment. But the shingles are still wet from the rain, Mary insisted. Wait until morning, Edward. Oh, they fled the village because they robbed them of everything. They took all the grain supplies, all the shit the village had, and just fucked off into the night. Please, I shall be down in a moment, Edward said stubbornly. Why do you always treat me as though I'm Ezra's age, Mary? Ezra is his son. Why do you always insist on being so reckless? Mary replied. It's as if you have to show off to Uncle Benjamin and my father. You have nothing to prove to them, Edward. Maybe I have things to prove to myself, Edward muttered. Now please, cousin, allow me to make my inspection of the shingles before the moon is up. Yeah, I've heard that line before. Mary obediently took a step back. May I hold the ladder in place for you? She asked as Edward began to climb. You know you should be in the kitchen helping Rebecca and your mother clean the dinner dishes. Mary groaned and rolled her eyes. I am 17, Cousin Edward, she said sharply. I am not a girl. I am a woman. Your place is still in the kitchen, Edward called down. He had reached the roof and was edging his way off the ladder. It appears much steeper up here than it did down on the ground, he said. Yeah, I don't know how Edward rationalized it. I'm not sure if that gets addressed. I think he's just so deeply stupid he probably don't question anything. Mary backed up a few paces to see him better. The sun had disappeared. Edward was a dark figure against an even darker sky. Please, be careful, Mary called. You're up so high, and it's so dark, and... Her voice caught in her throat as Edward's arms shot up. She saw his legs buckle and his body tilt. And then she opened her mouth wide and began to scream as she realized Edward was falling head first to the ground. End of chapter 13. Yeah. I agree, he's super gullible, and also, after saying your place is in the kitchen, he did pretty much deserve to fall. I like the idea that Mary opened her mouth and then started screaming. Like, she doesn't just kind of do the whole thing at once. She just goes, ah! Chapter 14. Edward hit the ground with a sickening crack. The horrifying sound split the air louder than Mary's screams. Ah! A second later, another scream burst from the house. Matthew came hurrying from the tool house at the end of the garden, followed by Benjamin, hobbling as fast as he could with his walking stick. Rebecca, Edward's wife, was first from the house, with Constance, Matthew's wife, right behind her. Oh, hello, darling. You're not my darling, you're a bag of rubbish. I thought I heard a meow. Yeah, she does the screaming in stages. She's not really used to it. Mary, her hands pressed against her face, hurried over to Edward, diving beside him on the dark ground. Edward! He gazed up at her lifelessly, a startled expression on his face. Edward? Hey, Danny. Do you want a quick recap? No, that's all good. I did not check with you guys or look at Discord or anything, which is so dumb of me, but you'll hear about my day later. It makes sense. Okay. They're in a new village. It's 18 years later. Benjamin's son, Edward, remember Edward Fear, dumbest boy in town, now married to a woman called Rebecca, who used to be giggly and happy, but now she sucks because they had a son called Ezra who was 6 and a real handful. He's a piece of crap. No one in the family likes him. Meanwhile, Matthew has married Constance. I don't know if they were married before this or not. And they have an 17-year-old daughter called Mary, with copper-coloured hair and creamy skin. She's the girl of this part. So, that's the recap. Oh, and also William Good has found them, finally, and he's been watching them from the trees. And he's still pretty pissed off. Is that good? Like, is that enough of a recap? It's fine, I don't mind recapping. I've done it like several times during this video already. Yeah, okay. So Edward's just fallen off the roof. Edward? He blinked. Haha, you're wrong, Mahu screamed. Swallowed hard. Took a noisy, deep breath. My arm, he whispered. Mary lowered her gaze to his... Everyone's always lowering or raising their gaze. Like... Danny, I know what joke you're making right now, and it is funny. Mary lowered her gaze to his left arm, buried beneath his body at an unnatural angle. She gasped. I can't move it, Edward whispered. You broke it, Mary replied, gently placing a hand on his chest. Misogynist arm. Yeah, exactly. What happened? Benjamin cried breathlessly, still struggling to get to the house. Is Edward injured? Matthew demanded. Edward, can you get up? Constance asked softly. Mary turned and raised her eyes to her mother and Rebecca. Oh, Mother! She cried in horror, her mouth dropping open in disbelief. The front of Constance's dress was splattered with blood. Constance lowered her gaze. She held up her hand. Blood poured down her arm. I was cleaning the carving knife. When I heard you scream, Mary, she explained. The sound startled me. The knife slipped and... She hesitated. It shall be fine. Just let us get you into the house, Mary cried, jumping to her feet. We have to stop the bleeding. Yeah, you don't really put your hand on the chest of a male relative. It's weird. I don't know. We're not a touching culture, really. As Mary led her mother back into the kitchen, Matthew and Rebecca lifted Edward to his feet, with his good arm around Rebecca's shoulders, his wife. Edward took a few unsteady steps. I think I can walk, Edward said, his jaw clenched against the pain. But my arm, it is badly broken, I fear. Dewey, I'm cut in half pretty bad. Dewey Cox, the Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story, is a great movie. It's one of those musical biopic things, but it's a parody. So it starts off with Dewey Cox accidentally cutting his brother in half with a machete. And that's his tragic origin story. Anyway, Leaning heavily on his walking stick, Benjamin in fear watched them walk off, shaking his head. "Cursed," he growled to himself. "The whole family is cursed." The harsh crowing of roosters woke Mary at dawn. Grey light filtered through her tiny bedroom window. The air in the room felt hot and heavy. She pulled herself up slowly, not at all rested. The back of her shift stuck to her skin. "What a horrid night," she thought, stretching, her shoulders aching. "I don't think I slept an entire hour. I just kept picturing Edward lying on the ground in a heap. I kept hearing the crack as his arm broke, and I kept seeing the blood pouring down Mother's arm." Are you laughing? Are you laughing at Mary's voice? It's a good one, I think. I don't know what it is, but it's a good one. "I tied Mother's wrist as tightly as I could, but it seemed to take forever to stop the flow of blood." Meanwhile, Edward howled in pain as Matthew struggled to set the broken arm. Ezra was screaming and crying in the corner. Poor Rebecca didn't know which of her family to comfort, Edward or Ezra. The one that doesn't have other family members fussing over him is probably the one you want to go for. I'm old-fashioned. Finally, yeah. Oh, Dewey Cox is such a good movie. Dark fucking period of my life. It's just a line you can use anytime. Finally, a sling was fashioned for Edward from a bolt of heavy linen. Rebecca led her family back to their house, Ezra's frightened wails ringing through the air. What an unfortunate night. Mary lowered her feet to the floor, then made her way to the dresser, squinting against the grey light. "Why do I have this feeling?" she wondered. "Why do I have this dark feeling that our bad luck isn't over?" ... Mary returned from the hen house after breakfast, a large basket of white and brown eggs pressed against the front of her long white apron. The sun was just climbing above the trees, but the air was already hot and sticky. Puffy clouds hovered overhead. A rooster crowed. Somewhere in the direction of the barn, a dog barked in reply. Mary walked with her head lowered, her copper hair flowing down her back, nearly to the waist of her linen dress. She nearly dropped the egg basket when a strange voice behind her called out, "Good morning, miss." Uttering a short cry of surprise, "Oh!" Mary spun around and stared into the sky-blue eyes of a smiling young man. He grinned at her, his eyes lighting up as if enjoying her surprise. Comforting her husband is probably better for her than comforting the piece of shit kid that everyone hates. I keep thinking I hear a cat outside. It's Ivy's ghost. "Oh, hello," Mary stammered. "I didn't see you." She realized she was staring at him. He was a good-looking boy, about her age, maybe a year or two older. Above his sparkling blue eyes, he had heavy blonde eyebrows, on a broad tanned forehead. The skin beside his eyes crinkled when he smiled. He had wavy blonde hair, the colour of butter, which fell heavily down to his collar. Ooh, butter. He wore a loose-fitting white shirt, the front open nearly to his waist, over Indian-style deerskin breeches. His boots were worn and covered with dust. "I'm sorry to trouble you," he said, still grinning, his eyes locked on hers. "I'm looking for the owner of this farm." "That would be my father," Mary replied, turning her gaze to the house. "Matthew Fear." It's the sexiest thing hair can look like, Butter. His forehead is tanned, but the rest is really white. Yeah, he's got a bizarre farmer's tan. No one knows how he got it. Is your father around?" the young man asked, the morning sunlight making his blonde hair glow golden. I believe so. Follow me, Mary replied shyly. He reached out and took the egg basket from her. I'll carry it for you, he said, smiling pleasantly at her. It looks heavy. I carry it every morning, Mary protested, but she allowed him to take the basket. We have a lot of chickens. It's a very big farm, the boy said, gesturing to the far pasture with his free hand. His boots crunched loudly over the hard ground. My father and I settled here recently. We live in a small cabin outside the village. I don't think I've ever seen a farm this big. Mary smiled awkwardly. My father and uncle came here before I was born. The farm has been growing ever since. I don't know. It's very confusing. What is your name, miss? The boy asked boldly, his blue eyes flashing. Before Mary could answer, Matthew appeared, lumbering out the back door. I know, right? His flannel shirt hung loose over his belly. His knee breeches had a stain on one knee. Matthew yawned loudly and stretched his hands over his head. Then he noticed the young man holding the egg basket beside Mary. Egg basket is funny to me for some reason, I don't know. Just let me have it. Oh, Matthew said, furrowing his brow and clearing his throat. And who might you be? Matthew's brusqueness did not seem to bother the young man. Good morning, he said with a confident smile. My name is Jeremy Thorne, sir. And what might your business be, Jeremy Thorne? Matthew asked. Has Mary hired you to be her egg carrier? Jeremy laughed, even though Matthew's remark wasn't terribly funny. Ha ha, no, sir, he replied cheerfully, but I have come to your farm in search of work. Matthew Fear stared rather unpleasantly at Jeremy. I regret to say I'm not looking for farm help right now, he told Jeremy. If you would kindly... Matthew was interrupted by Edward, perspiring from his walk across the pasture from his house. Wait a moment, Uncle Matthew, Edward cried. He raised his free hand to halt the conversation. Startled, Matthew turned to his nephew. Good morning, nephew. Does the arm give much pain this morning? Enough, Edward replied dryly, glancing at his arm suspended in the sling. I overheard your conversation with this young man, Uncle Matthew. Every time I turn a page, it's a little bit slow. I believe we do need an extra hand. He gestured to his heavy sling. You have lost my services for a while, Edward continued. I believe this boy's timing is perfect. He can take some of my tasks, until my arm is healed. Egg carrier is not the clinical term for cucking. I don't know, maybe it is. Who knows? Unhand my daughter's eggs, screamed Matthew. That's not in it. That's not it. Sorry. Matthew rubbed his chin thoughtfully, his eyes trained on Jeremy. Maybe, he muttered reluctantly. Where do you come from, boy? From the village, Jeremy replied, eyeing Edward's sling. Bet he is. My father and I settled here recently. My father is ill, sir. I am our sole support. No sad stories, please. Matthew cut him off, still rubbing his many chins. I'm trying not to read these bits, but ugh. Really? Do they get really... Norwegian, the word for eggs is the same as the main slang for testicles. Oh, not for, like, ovary eggs, though, because I thought that would make, like, sex ed class really difficult. Where'd you come from, boy? Over there. Yeah, we just wrapped up a D&D one-shot where I played Sharon the Barbarian, and it was amazing. It was so much fun. All I did was go, yeah, and nah, and just run down corridors, and amazed I didn't get eaten by ghosts. They'd be having a seance, and they'd be like, is there anyone who wishes to speak with us? And I'd be like, nah! Any ghost? Anyway, Matthew studied him. You look strong enough. Jeremy raised himself to his full height, throwing back his broad, muscular shoulders. Yes, sir, he said quietly. Mary stood stiffly, watching them all. She wanted to urge her father to hire Jeremy, but she knew better than to utter a word. It was not her place. It was a fun game. Still in the name of my broken arm, I conjure thee. Matthew nodded. All right, Jeremy Thorne. You may begin by cleaning out that tool house. Any ghost? Nah, there aren't goats here. There's no goats in a house. Random. Yeah. We found the spectral butler, and Sharon kept calling him a special bolter. I fell in love with the character. Anyway, he pointed to a low wooden structure behind the garden. Put all of the equipment out. We plan to build a bigger one. Thank you, sir, Jeremy exclaimed happily. I am very grateful. And my pay? 10 shillings a week, Matthew replied quickly. But let us see what kind of worker you are before we begin to think of you as more than temporary help. I don't know why them saying Matthew had a high-pitched voice turned into that, but I don't care. Tool house. Yeah, the tool house is where Edward lives. Exactly. Yeah. Oh, very good, sir, Jeremy said. He glanced quickly at Mary. She felt a shiver at the back of her neck. He's so good-looking, she thought, lowering her eyes to the ground. All kinds of thoughts raced through her mind. Surprising thoughts. Exciting thoughts. But of course, father would never approve of anything between a mere farmhand and me, she realized, stopping the flow of wild thoughts in midstream. Jeremy Thorne. Jeremy. 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 She couldn't stop his name from repeating in her mind. Her heart pounding, Mary took the egg basket from Jeremy and hurried to the house. Yeah, it's an unpaid temp job. It's for experience. It's for exposure. The talk at lunch was of the dreadful mishaps of the night before. Poor Edward. Poor Constance. They all lowered their heads in prayer before starting their soup. Usually, yes. Mary couldn't stop thinking about Jeremy. All morning long, as she'd done her many chores, she had sneaked peeks at him from the door. She saw that he was proving to be as hard a worker as he had claimed. At the back of the garden, she could see a pile of tools and heavy equipment he had dragged out of the tool house. She watched him working alone back there, lowering his head to enter the structure, and then appearing again with another handful of items. I love it when I see a boy carry a handful of items. Mary, what are you daydreaming about? Her mother demanded, breaking into Mary's thoughts after lunch as they began washing the dishes. Nothing at all, really, Mary lied, blushing. Barely said a word at lunch. I watched you, Constance said. You hardly touched your soup. I wasn't hungry, I guess, Mother, Mary replied dreamily. Please stop gazing out into the garden and help me with the dishes, Constance ordered. You see I have only one hand. She cut her hand. I don't know if you remember that bit. Go rest, Mother, Mary said. I will clean the dishes by myself. After the dishes were washed and put away, Mary picked up a basket and headed out to the garden to pick vegetables for the evening meal. The sun blazed down. Mary could see waves of heat rising off the near pasture. And her pussy. Sorry. Sorry. Nope. Oh, too bad it's live, eh? As she bent to pull up some turnips. She's pulling turnips, right? A movement at the back of the garden caught her eye. Jeremy was emerging, drenched with sweat. pulling out several heavy iron hoes and rakes. I kind of wish there wasn't a delay on this, because I was like, oh no. On impulse, Mary dropped her vegetable basket to the dirt and hurried to the well at the side of the house. A few seconds later, she was standing in front of Jeremy, a tall pewter mug of cold well water in her hands. "Here," she said, thrusting the mug at him. "I thought you might be thirsty." He smiled at her, breathing hard. His blonde hair was matted flat to his forehead. He had removed his shirt, and the smooth, muscular chest glistened with sweat. I'm partly laughing at how I seem to be choosing to read this. Oh yeah, all the fire metaphors are building. They're building. Danny, you can feel free to picture him as a girl if like this is too gross for you. Just flip the genders in your head, it's fine. It would make it weirder that she has her shirt off. Oh, Errol Stone being erotic is so weird. Ooh, I got a text from my sister. I will, maybe. Thank you very much. Hang on. I'm on YouTube right now, so can't talk. Being very rude. Ha ha ha. They are scum to me. Misspelled scum. I am. Sorry, where we get up to? You're very kind, Miss Fear, he said. He raised the mug to his lips, and keeping his blue eyes on her, thirstily gulped several mouthfuls. Oh. Then he tilted the mug over his head and dumped the rest onto his hair. It poured over his hair and face and onto his tanned shoulders. They both laughed. You may call me Mary, she told him shyly, feeling her cheeks redden. You're a very hard worker, she added quickly. Tali's laughing. Her remarks seemed to please him. I believe in doing a job well, he said seriously. My father and I, we've always been poor. My father's health has never been good, and I've known hard work since I was barely out of swaddling clothes. Oh yeah, his shoulders and his forehead, that's all. Mary gazed over his shoulder toward the rolling green pasture. I work hard too, she said wistfully. There is so much to do on a farm this size. It is an admirable place, Jeremy said, turning to follow her gaze. It is very lonely here, Mary said suddenly. She hadn't planned on saying it. The words escaped before she could stop them. Her cheeks suddenly felt as if they were on fire. She lowered her eyes to the dirt. Do you have friends on other farms? Jeremy asked softly. Friends in town? Church friends? No. I have my family. That is all, Mary said sadly. She cleared her throat. But I have so many chores that I'm usually too busy to think about friends and... You're very pretty, Jeremy interrupted. Startled by the compliment, Mary looked up to find his blue eyes staring intently at her. I like your hair, he said softly. It has the color of sunset. Thank you, Jeremy, Mary replied awkwardly. He took a step toward her, his eyes locked on hers. Has he been making unbreaking eye contact this entire time? Because it paints a different picture. What is he doing? Mary asked herself, feeling her heart start to pound. Why is he staring at me like that? Is he trying to frighten me? No. He's going to kiss me, Mary realized. She started to take a step back, to move away, but she stopped. He's going to kiss me, and I want him to. Mary! A voice behind her made her cry out. Oh! She turned to see Rebecca running through the garden, waving to her wildly with both arms, her white apron flapping at the front of her dress as she ran. Jeremy thrust the mug back at Mary, then turned and headed quickly toward the tool house. Damn, girl, you have so many features. Love a girl with a nose. Any kind of nose, doesn't matter. Rebecca, what is the matter? Mary demanded, gripping the empty pewter mug in both hands. Have you seen Matthew? Edward? Where are they? Rebecca cried, her features twisted in fear. I'm trying to make fear and fear sound different, but they just don't. Rebecca, what is the matter? Mary repeated. Come quickly, Mary, Rebecca insisted, grabbing Mary's arm. Please, come, something horrible has happened. End of chapter 14. I do want to find out what the horrible thing is. But I also need to pee. Alright, we'll do another chapter. It won't be that long. Chapter 15. With Rebecca's shrill, frightened cry still ringing in her ears, Mary raced after her through the garden to the house. This way! Rebecca shouted breathlessly, running through the kitchen and into the sitting room. I know where my own house is, Rebecca, Mary replied. She didn't. I'm not calling Tali putting her live on YouTube. She would punish me. It would not happen. It took Mary's eyes a while to adjust to the sudden darkness. She gasped out loud when she saw Benjamin sprawled stiffly on his back on the floor. Look, that is how I found him, Rebecca cried, pointing with a trembling finger. Her black hair had come undone and fell in disarray over her shoulders. What were you doing in there with Benjamin? That's something I never considered. Her dark lips formed an O of horror as she stared at the fallen man. Mary dropped to her knees beside Benjamin. Is he dead, Rebecca? She peered into Benjamin's face. His eyes were frozen in a glazed, wide-eyed stare. His mouth hung open loosely, revealing 2 rows of perfect teeth. What? I think so, Rebecca replied in a whisper, and then she went running back to the doorway, shouting, Matthew! Edward, come quickly! Mary reached for Benjamin's hand and squeezed it. It was as cold as ice. Okay, if he's been dead a while, what was Rebecca doing with him in the sitting room? Never mind, not my business. She swallowed hard, gaping down into the blank, dark eyes that stared lifelessly up at her. I've never seen a dead person, she thought. What's happening, Rebecca? Edward had appeared in the doorway. I heard you calling, and he lowered his eyes to the floor. Father? He must have been sitting there, Rebecca stammered, pointing to the high-backed chair against the wall. He must have fallen, I think. Father! Edward cried again, and dropped beside Mary. Is he breathing? I don't think so, Mary said softly. I think... She and Edward both cried out at once as Benjamin blinked. Father! Uncle Benjamin! He blinked again. His lips quivered, his mouth slowly closed. He's alive, Mary told Rebecca happily. Rebecca let out a long sigh and closed her eyes. Slumping against a wall, she began whispering a prayer. I wish I was not in this shitty YA fiction. Why couldn't I have been on Wolf Hall? Hilary Mantel's Wolf Hall, and its sequels, Bring Up the Bodies, and the third one in the trilogy, The Mirror and the Light. They were really good books. I can't believe that's all in here. That's so prescient. He was running a reverse fever. He was burning cold. Benjamin raised his head groggily. Lie still, father. Take your time, Edward urged, a hand on Benjamin's shoulder. I am able to rise, Benjamin insisted gruffly. Let me up. Edward moved his hands behind Benjamin's shoulders and helped him to sit up. Uncle Benjamin, what happened? How do you feel? Mary asked. I must have been dozing, Benjamin growled, shaking his head, blinking several times to clear his eyes. Fell from the chair, I guess. Matthew burst into the room, breathing hard, his round face bright red from the exertion of hurrying. Was someone calling? Oh, sorry. Was someone calling me? He asked breathlessly. He cried out when he saw his brother on the floor. I am fine, Benjamin told him. Do not get hysterical. He started to climb to his feet, and then hesitated. His expression turned to surprise. Uncle Benjamin, what is it? Mary asked, still on her knees beside him. The others drew near. My left leg, Benjamin muttered. I can't move it. He moved his right leg, drawing it up, then making the foot roll from side to side. I have no feeling, Benjamin said, sounding more startled than worried. No feeling at all in the left leg. Yeah, whenever anyone cries out, I do it, and I was worried it was getting annoying, but I'm not going to stop, so like... Oh, it is all completely breathless. It is, I mean, the curse is kicking in. Glancing up, Mary watched as her father grasped the odd three-toed medallion he wore around his neck. How strange, Matthew declared. Edward, help me to my feet, Benjamin ordered. Not everyone in the book has asthma. Susanna and Martha are dead. Edward obediently wrapped an arm around his father's shoulders and with great difficulty hoisted him to his feet. Benjamin's eyes narrowed as he tried to put weight on his left leg. He would have fallen if Edward and Mary hadn't caught him. No feeling in the leg at all, Benjamin said, thoughtfully. It does not hurt. There is no pain. It does not feel like anything. It is as if the leg has been taken away from me. Help me to my feet. My foot. The other one belongs to someone else, I guess. Wisps of cloud floated low in a bright sky. The white trunks of the beech trees at the end of the pasture gleamed in the late afternoon sunlight. Mary stepped along the edge of the woods, lifting her skirt over low shrubs and rocks. Above her the leaves trembled in a soft breeze. She turned where the trees ended and felt the blood pulse at her temples as Jeremy came into view. It was not any temples, but he was working shirtless as usual. I wish I could stop doing that. His back to her, tugging with gloved hands at a tangle of brambles at his feet. She crept closer. The tree leaves appeared to tremble harder. Or is it my imagination? Mary wondered. Is it just my excitement? For 3 days, Jeremy had been working to clear the brambles from the new section of land. Each afternoon, Mary had met him there. She brought him water from the well. Woohoo! Jeremy would take a break from his solitary efforts. It's not as much fun solo, is it? Depending. They would sit together on a fallen tree trunk and talk. Jeremy was so sweet, so understanding, so kind, Mary came to believe. She could feel herself growing close to him. She could feel herself beginning to fall in love with him. The feeling swept over her gently, almost like pulling on a favourite wool cloak. Comfortable, reassuring, warm. She calls her nether regions a temple. Why are there 2 of them? None of my business.
I feel as if I've known you all my life, she told him after he had finished the mug of cold water.
Her eyes trailed a golden black butterfly as it fluttered near the trees. Sitting beside her on the smooth tree trunk, he kicked the soft dirt with the heel of one boot. "Every afternoon I worry that you won't come," he said softly. At least he's trying. Sorry, no, let's be adults here, guys. Guys, I'm really going to have to ask you to settle down, okay? We're just going to have to be grown up about this.
Here I am, she replied, smiling.
But if your father found out, Jeremy started, staring into her eyes as if challenging her, a wave of blonde hair tumbling over his forehead. Mary's smile faded.
My father would not approve, she admitted. After all, you are only a poor farmhand, without a shilling. And I...
You are royalty, Jeremy joked. But there was bitterness behind the joke. Queen Anne! He rose to his feet and dipped his head in a courtly bow. The Queen at the time was Anne from the movie The Favourite, and to a lesser extent, real life. He's concerned about her coming, yeah. He's trying. I do my best. I'm trying. Mary giggled.
Please stop. I am sure that after some time...
Time, Jeremy muttered. His eyes went to the thick brambles that rolled over the rocky ground. Time for me to get back to work, he said. Your father has instructed me to clear this field before the week is out.
My father is not the true snob of the family, Mary said, lost in her own thoughts. My Uncle Benjamin would be much more alarmed than my father if he knew.
How does your Uncle Benjamin feel? Jeremy interrupted, his features tensing in concern.
Not well, Mary replied, frowning. His left arm has given out, along with the leg.
You mean?
He cannot move the left arm now. He has no feeling in it. It is completely numb, he says. His entire left side is paralyzed.
And how are his spirits? Jeremy asked.
Hard to tell, Mary replied thoughtfully. He is as difficult and cantankerous as ever. He is not a man to give in to illness or affliction. She sighed. Despite his strong spirit, he is as helpless as a baby.
He is lucky to have you as a nurse, Jeremy replied, his eyes lighting up. And before Mary could cry out, "Oh!" or protest, he leaned over and pressed his mouth against hers. Closing her eyes, Mary returned the kiss eagerly.
This is not proper. This isn't right. But I do not care, she thought. ...
This is like a paragraph, so it's the next bit.
Edward, please wait for me, Mary pleaded. Don't walk so fast.
Twigs snapped beneath her shoes as she hurried to catch up to him. Sorry, Edward said, turning to her. He pulled up a long, straight reed with his good hand and stuck one end in his mouth. I was thinking about something. Yes, yeah. Mary stepped up behind him breathlessly.
About your father?
Edward nodded. A bird cawed loudly above their heads.
Oh!
Mary gazed up into a red sunset sky to see two large blackbirds standing side by side on a low limb. Smooching.
Are blackbirds good luck or bad?
She asked her cousin lightly. Bad luck, I believe, he replied thoughtfully. Black is the colour of death, is it not?
You do not have to be so gloomy, Mary complained. I asked you to come out for a walk to cheer you up.
Sorry, he frowned. I am gloomy.
I cannot help it, Mary. Because of your arm, Edward. It will heal. No, he replied, glancing down at the heavy sling. I'm worried about my father. And Rebecca. And Rebecca! Mary interrupted, stepping over a tree stump. Is Rebecca ill? Edward shook his head. No, but she seems so weary all the time, so exhausted, so dispirited. She seems so different to me. She's got the postpartums. Yeah, I think she is tired, Mary told him. Ezra is not an easy child. Edward didn't reply. They continued their walk through the woods in silence. The last rays of sunlight. Oh, Edward's dad is Benjamin. Edward's dad is Benjamin Fear. So iron deficient, yeah. Because remember when Edward wanted to marry Susanna and he went to Benjamin Fear and he was like, Father, let me marry her. And Father was like, no, my son, you are my son and I am Benjamin Fear and you are Edward Fear. You are the son of me. And Edward was like, gosh darn it. That's how I remember it. The last rays of sunlight slid between the slender trees, casting rippling blue shadows at their feet. It's nearly dinner time, Edward said, finally, chewing on the end of the reed. Rebecca will worry. Let us head back, Mary agreed, running her fingers along the trunk of a tall oak as she turned around. Oh yeah, it's much easier when you have the family tree in front of you, even though I should make a little sign and I can hold it up. I tried to speak to my father this afternoon, Edward told her, letting her take the lead. I needed to speak to him about the receipts for the store, but he would only talk about his paralyzed arm and leg. Oh! They had walked into a swarm of buzzing gnats. Mary raised her hands to shield her eyes. She quickened her pace, nearly stumbling over a jagged white rock in her path. It is so strange about Father, Edward continued, still scratching at his neck even though the gnats had been left behind. He feels perfectly fine. He seems to be in good health. He has no pain. And yet... perhaps his strength will return, Mary said hopefully. She stopped and turned to him. You seem so troubled, cousin. You can talk of nothing but our family's gloomy problems and mishaps. Everything was going so well for us, Edward replied with emotion. We were all so happy. After we burned my girlfriend and her mother and stole the shit from that village. And now, all of a sudden, he stopped walking. Mary saw his eyes grow wide and his mouth drop open. The reed fell to his feet. Edward, what is it? She turned as he pointed. At first she thought the yellow glow was the sun poking between the trees, but she quickly remembered that the sun was nearly down. This yellow light was too bright, too fiery. Fire! Edward screamed, the flames reflected in his frightened eyes. The woods are on fire! No, Mary cried, grabbing his good arm. Edward, look! Inside the glowing fireball, a figure writhed. Someone is trapped in the flames, Mary shrieked. End of chapter 15. And I gotta go get ready for D&D, and also my voice is given out because I gave Mary an unwise choice of voice, and then I just couldn't stop. But thank you guys so much for this. It's so much fun. And we're going to find out what that bright fire-like light is. Is it the sun? There's no D&D tonight. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Sorry. Totally blanking, but yeah, my voice is giving out. Oh, awesome. Alright. Thank you all so much for being here, and I will see you tomorrow for more The Burning. The curse is starting to take effect. But no one's died yet. Or have they?
Oh, you've been having big sads. Okay, I'll jump on Discord and chat to you in a bit. I'm just gonna go to the loo and all that. Okay, thanks you guys. Have a good night.
See you tomorrow for the burning. I don't know why.